So recently I was in an argument with a friend of mine, about he was saying that, oh, the CIA goes and just does all these assassinations and kills people when they want. And I said, CIA is not permitted to do that anymore. They got out of the business of assassinating people uh, in the 70s, basically. And they will go to jail, or at least they're eligible for jail if they kill anybody without authorization from the highest levels. I mean, it has to come from like literally the administration, the presidential administration, or his cabinet. Anyway, he was like, my friend is like, oh, and where's your information coming from? Like, I'm the one that needed to provide a source. And I said, well, how about the book Ghost Wars? And he said, oh, I have read every word of Ghost Wars. And then I said, well, then you should know about how the CIA got out of uh, the business of assassinating people, unless it's specifically authorized by the president, basically. And I had read some chapters of Ghost Wars. It's quite a large book. I hadn't read every word, so I decided, sort of, despite my friend or whatever, to go ahead and read every word of Ghost Wars. So I did, and I found a lot of things pretty interesting. A lot of lessons I think that could be learned for the U.S. and could help the U.S. Number one, dealing with we have to be careful about the kind of person we're dealing with, even if it seems in the short term that it's going to be beneficial. And even it may be beneficial in the short term, but in the long term, it can be quite harmful. One example I would give was the U.S. support of a guy named Hekmatyar, who had been known to viciously assault women, Afghan women, for daring to go out on the streets unveiled. However, Hekmatyar also, in addition to assaulting women, happened to be the best at assaulting Russian soldiers. And so the U.S. provided him, Hekmatyar, with literally hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money. Here on page 165 of Ghost Wars, says he had received several $100 million in aid from American taxpayers. Yet he, Hekmatyar, had refused to travel to New York to shake hands with the infidel Ronald Reagan. Why was the CIA supporting him? The questionnaires were egged on by Hekmatyar's rivals in the resistance. That's other mujahideen who wanted their own share of U.S. taxpayer money. Anyway, despite Hekmatyar being pretty vicious human rights violator, he was amongst the best at assaulting Russian soldiers and troops in Afghanistan. That was a short-term interest of the United States at the time. But it was quite a balancing act for pretty much all the parties involved, including the U.S., Pakistan, and the Mujahideen themselves, including Hekmatyar. There's a lot of questions whether it was okay to go on the offensive against the Russians, or whether we should be doing more defensive, supporting independent freedom fighters in Afghanistan. Something popped up on the computer here. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, so whether we should be supporting independent freedom fighters in Afghanistan, or whether we should be doing offensive attacks against Russians. We sort of decided to do both. For example, we allowed sniper rifles, high-powered sniper rifles, to go to the Mujahideen, and also Stinger surface-air missiles, which were devastatingly effective against Afghan helicopters. But those were surprisingly somewhat seen as defensive weapons, because a sniper rifle could be used to take out, let's say, a fueling truck or a tank that's attacking, supposedly a tank, and Stinger missiles could defend against a helicopter or whatever. Other equipment like night vision goggles, even the CIA's vivid imagination had a hard time justifying that as being a defensive weapon. So the Mujahideen didn't get so much equipment such as night vision goggles, but they did get Stinger surface-to-air missiles, which were very effective against Russian helicopters. Later, there's a big program for the U.S. to buy back the Stinger missiles that we bought for them, so that they wouldn't shoot down our own aircraft in airports and other places. It's amazing that a Stinger missile never has shot down a civilian airliner, thankfully. Anyway, that was one good program. We sold the Stinger missiles to the Mujahideen to shoot down Russian aircraft, and then when they didn't use a lot of them, we spent hundreds of millions of dollars to buy the missiles back. Okay. But one of the most important messages I got from the whole book was the lesson that diplomacy could really have. Eventually, the Mujahideen, it was hard to sort of control them. There's a lot of questions whether the Pakistani government itself could really be put in jeopardy if the Mujahideen went too far. Russia could intervene. The dictator of Pakistan was quite scared of Russia. It always talks about don't let the pot boil over, let it simmer just right. All these weird analogies. Anyway, eventually the Mujahideen who we were training did go into Russia and commit a terrorist attack there against a factory. Finally, at that point, Russia told them very clearly, told Pakistan, if you intervene in our actual borders ever again, we'll directly intervene in Pakistan. And all of a sudden, all these Mujahideen who Pakistan and the CIA said, hey, we fund these people, but we can't control them. Well, once Russia threatened to intervene directly in Pakistan, the leader, dictator, Zia al-Haq in Pakistan found a way to control the Mujahideen, who he previously wasn't able to control. And so that did actually stop the Mujahideen from committing terrorist actions in Russia for a long time. So that was good. That shows the importance that diplomacy really can play. When Russian diplomats said, if you threaten our country directly, then we will go into your country, intervene directly, that actually prevented a lot of terrorist attacks in Russia. So that was one of the most powerful lessons for me, that diplomacy really can make a huge difference and prevent terrorist attacks even more than bullets or direct action or supplies ever could. So diplomacy is an incredibly powerful tool, and that's just a lesson I would take away from that. And hopefully our leaders take the same lesson and we could all be a little bit more safe. Hope this helped. Goodbye.